Mr. Garish, zoning bylaw review miscellaneous items.
I'll just start with some quick background, which I'm sure Council is aware of, but my understanding is the preparation of the new zoning bylaw has been ongoing since 2022. It's not just the zoning bylaw that's being looked at. There's two other components, which includes the foreshore and lake zoning bylaw as well as short-term rentals, neither of which will be touched on in the presentation today, but I suspect we'll be coming back to you at some future point with some questions and requests for direction as well. And yeah, I think what I've already highlighted that in light of Bill 44 that we're looking at implementing some of this stuff into the zoning bylaw. So I'll jump right into it. So the first one that I had was cannabis operation. And I know this was a perplexing issue for a lot of local governments when the federal government legalized it back in 2018,
I think so.
yeah, and lead up to that. And also the production end of it as well, not just the retail. So I'll start with the production end. So as I understand in the town's bylaw at the moment, there is a reference to cannabis operation, which is basically the production end of it. And I've got a definition up there as the first dot point. It's a use that's prohibited in all zones unless approved by council. And then interestingly, within the zoning bylaw, which is a regulatory bylaw, there's policy statements that speak to the situations in which council would consider potentially approving a cannabis operation for production. And that speaks to it being on a site-specific basis and in an industrial zone. Council will look at considerations of that use on adjacent public health and safety, as well as nuisance such as smell and noise. So we've now had the benefit of 6 years since legalization and dealing with these, and I think there's only been a couple of instances where council has approved a cannabis operation on a site-specific basis in the industrial zone. And I guess looking at that now with the benefit of hindsight and considering that I'm assuming there's been no issues with these operations that have occurred, and if council's open to having indoor agriculture as a use in the industrial zones, can we look at providing flexibility by just allowing that as a standalone use so that there is no need to come forward for rezonings, and that the use be expanded to not just cannabis but also other forms of produce, flowers, nuts, etc., and just be a permitted use in the M1 zone. If council's open to that, then theoretically we wouldn't need to have the policies that are currently in the zoning bylaw moved over to the OCP. We would just treat it as a permitted industrial use. And the second part of cannabis is the retail sales. And again, I know that was a big issue a number of years ago when legalization happened. And very similar to council's approach on cannabis production, although there's no specific definition for cannabis sales, my understanding is that it's prohibited in all zones unless approved by council on a site-specific basis. To date, there's only been one use approved. That's at 8322 Main Street. And again, just like cannabis production, there's existing policy statements within the zoning bylaw that speak to council, how council will look at a proposal that comes forward for rezoning. So we're hopeful, and again, just from a flexibility perspective, that you know, hopefully it's time that we can look at cannabis sales as just another retail use, and that it doesn't have to be a standalone one that requires council approval every time somebody wants to undertake it, and that if we take that as an interpretation, cannabis sales would just be looked at as any other retail sale, and where the zone allows for retail sales, theoretically, then you could do cannabis outlet.
Everybody's okay with that? I think so. Mm-hmm.